How would you decide?
Well, interesting question. I don't know. I'd have to do some research on that.
Hey everybody, welcome to Dapper Reacts 21, which is going to be the sequel to Catholic Creationism 2. I am here, of course, as typical, with Vishanti, who is indeed wearing feeders, because you guys managed to get to that $50 super chat last time. So, thank you very much. And that is, of course, I believe, still on the table.
It is still on the table.
Okay.
For any Saturday stream that I'm on and we reach $50 in super chats, I will wear feeders on the next stream I'm invited to.
Okay. And you guys might notice, but I have the drink counter up because it's been a weird few days, so I just decided to activate the drinking rules. I've got cider. This is some hard cider. It's not my favorite hard cider, but it'll do. It'll do. And for those of you who weren't here last time, or also, I'm not going to go over the drinking rules. You guys know the drinking rules. If people don't know the drinking rules, you'll figure them out as we take drinks. But importantly, the super chat drinking rules are still in place. So if you super chat anything to the effect that AIG or a bag of dicks, or if you super chat any of the kaiju emojis, we will take drinks for that. Although I believe that you are playing with coffee.
I am playing with coffee.
Okay.
Savage Cover says there should be a fling emoji.
I believe we've been wished a Shabbat Shalom by Jacques Ouleme.
Ouleme?
Yep.
Oh, Shabbat Shalom.
Apparently this is counting as shul. I think that, I don't think this counts as going to shul, but I don't actually know. I'm not in charge of that.
I wouldn't say it's shul. We're probably to a minion by now. How many people are in the stream?
So currently there are 38 viewing, but I don't know how many of them would count. That's the other tricky bit.
This is an informal minion.
Okay.
I'm not opposed to I don't know.
Alright, so last time we're taking a look at a speech about how the abandonment of the traditional Catholic view of creation, which is, as near as I can tell, either old or young Earth creationism, I'm not really sure, has been a disaster for science, and how only with the Catholic view of creation could we do things like successfully describe how the circulatory system works. But you know what? Since we were on that stream, Vishanti, you know what I found out after being informed and then looking into it to confirm? The good Catholic scientist who figured out on the basis of his creationist understanding of the human body how the circulatory system worked, did so in direct contravention of the Catholic Church's ban on dissection of humans. Weird, isn't it?
For that.
Yeah, huh. It's almost like if he actually were following Catholic doctrine, he wouldn't have found out what he found out about the human circulatory system. Weird how our Catholic interlocutor here didn't bother to mention any of that, isn't it? Curious and curiouser. Anyway.
Yeah. Also, in response to FSM is the dog, is there any significance to which ear you wear a fling on? No, I just prefer it on the left.
Okay.
Partially because of the way that I have my desk set up, but also because of the way my hair tends to part. It tends to fall on my face on this side, so I was like, yeah, I'm just gonna throw it on the left.
Hey, fair enough. All right.
Plus, I exfoliated and moisturized today, so I'm feeling like this is the better side of my two sides of my face. Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Not like it matters. I'm not Mariah Carey. I'm not gonna freak out if somebody goes, "Oh my god, we saw you from the other side."
Oh no. Thank you for doing extra skincare routine for today's show. It's very much appreciated.
Stay hydrated.
Yes. So, last time we left off right as he was telling us that, oh my goodness, some vestigial organs have function, which, yep, that's true. So we'll keep going. He was just telling us about the appendix, so we're going to continue learning about how the appendix has function, and apparently, for some reason, that is a problem for evolution. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, but there it is.
All right, well.
In fact, it's a very important part of our immune system.
No, that's dumb. We're taking a drink.
That's the kind of crap that Kent Hovind says. Like,
Yeah.
your appendix is part of your immune system.
So it is to some extent, right? It does function in some ways as sort of like a kind of a not very effective lymph node. But oh goodness, I forgot to do the thing. I have to set up the drink counter. So
Oh, you already had it up.
I did, but I forgot to actually tell it which file to reference so that I can actually use it. There it is. Sorry. For some reason, it doesn't store that. It just is like, oh, I'm gonna forget every single time. So yeah, it's bizarre. Anyway, so it does do that, right? But it's pretty crappy at it. And the thing is, there's essentially no measurable outcome difference in the like prognosis of people who do and do not have an appendix. So on net, what the appendix does for humans is kill some of them. And there's essentially no measurable amount of like extra longevity or like reduction in inflammation or infection or anything else like that associated with keeping your appendix. So while it does function weakly as a spot to help your immune system out, on the whole, it is a net drag on humanity, and humans would be better off if they were just born without them. And yet, they continuously are not.
Next slide. In fact, the only reason...
Hi, chat. Oh my god, you guys are on fire. They're talking about limping lymph nodes, lymph toad.
Toad.
All glory to the lymph node toad.
Lymph node toad, I like it. My goodness. Just a toad shaped out of lymph nodes with big hypnotic
Well done,
eyes.
but also...
Well, now I know what my next Blender character is going to have to be. A lymph node toad.
It's a lymph node toad. Oh
Okay.
god, that's good.
why children, once they reach the age of 10, and adults can have their appendix removed and continue to live is because the appendix does its most important work in the very earliest stage of life. When the baby leaves the protected environment of the womb, it goes out into a world which is full of things that are potentially harmful to that little body, and the appendix produces antibodies that protect that little child.
I mean, not as much as breast milk. That's a much more important source of antibodies. But okay.
This work is done especially in the first weeks and months after the child is born. Next slide.
Yeah, little tiny kids have really bad immune systems. That's a thing. And
They've been alive for no minutes.
right. Well, I mean, kind of. They haven't been an independent living thing for any minutes.
Let me clarify. They have been alive outside of a body
Yeah,
for
outside of
0
a
minutes.
very
So of
protected,
course they're starting on like factory default setting. So
Right. Which actually is why breast milk and just mammal milk in general tends to contain a lot of antibodies. It's to help train the immune system because, as a general rule, you do not have all of that antibodies in you when you're first born. Also, for similar reasons, that's why baby koalas eat a whole lot of mom's poop. Because they're not born with the microbes that allow them to digest eucalyptus. Have to get it somehow. And it's
yeah,
by
you have to accumulate these things.
yeah. Yep. Look, there's a lot of animals that do things that humans would consider really, really gross. Like, you know how the Bible seems to imply that rabbits chew the cud, even though technically they're not actually, vomiting up food from a separate stomach? What it's actually describing is that rabbits engage in what's called coprophagia, where they eat their own poop to get it through a second time. Yeah.
And for those of you that watched the X-Files War of the Coprophages was not my favorite episode.
That's actually why a lot of people have that little grate on their rabbit cages, because they don't want their rabbits doing that, and so then the poop just falls below the grate, and then the rabbits just have to eat more actual food.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, in the wild, they don't do that. They go and eat the poop. All right.
So today, any anatomist worth his salt or her salt knows and teaches that the appendix is part of our immune system. It's totally functional.
I mean, yeah, that's... If you're telling kids that there's no function, or students, I should say, because this might be, in like a higher level education, that the appendix doesn't do anything, then you're just lying. That's fair. So I guess I'll take a drink for him being right. We'll take a drink for him being right. Yes, you should be, as an anatomist or physiologist or whatever, teaching students that the appendix does do things. Vandali 1998 says, who's been a member for 28 months and is at the amniote level, says, don't know if it's true, but heard once having pets while pregnant helps babies with future allergies and stuff. And then sends a Mothra, which we're gonna drink for. And a pelagic tunicate, boo, and a citation needed. Yeah. So look, I haven't heard that, and I would need a citation, but it doesn't strike me as immediately, obviously nonsense, because
there's also anecdotal evidence that eating honey from your local environment helps you with the seasonal allergies. So
yeah, that's why the honey that's in this house is made from local flowers. Actually, I just had some with some cottage cheese for breakfast. That was my breakfast. Honey and cottage cheese. Very nice. So yeah, I'm not going to say that is something that I'm accepting, but it seems reasonable because it really is true that the environment that the pregnant animal finds itself in will affect the outcome of the baby, right? Like, we know that it certainly happens from environmental toxins that can be passed on to the baby. But I don't see a good reason why other things wouldn't also affect the baby. But I would want to see a study. Also, for $2, we have Royland Hutchins, who says, feeders. There we go.
Feeders.
We are now 4% of the way to feeders. All right, here we go.
But this is the BBC Science and Homepage. BBC is...
Remind me, Vishanti, is the BBC peer-reviewed?
No.
It's not? Huh. Okay.
No, it's
all right.
not.
I just wanted to double-check because I couldn't remember. It's been a while since I double-checked on that one.
Supposed to be the best,
Is
the
it?
most intellectual source of in-depth news reporting.
The British Broadcasting Network?
I'm gonna need a citation on...
Corporation, sorry.
Yeah. I'm gonna need a citation on the government-run British, UK media company being the best. Don't get me wrong. As news agencies go, I don't consider them the bottom of the barrel. They're not like I don't know, Fox or the Daily Mail.
Newsmax, but
right,
yeah.
they're not Newsmax, but the best, I would need to see a lot more evidence than this guy saying it. That's
Bro, where do you get your science from? If you're getting it from mainstream media that's not peer-reviewed journals, I think you're missing that mark.
Yeah, as a rule, science reporting is really bad. If you really want to know the story, read the science report, but then see what paper they're citing. Go check the paper. And if you can't read the paper because you're not familiar enough with that subject, try to email the lead contact on the paper. So if you look at a paper, usually the first name cited will have either an email after it, or it'll have in parentheses contact, the word contact. Sorry, I'm a little cough. Or if you're online, sometimes it'll actually have the little email symbol that you can click and just directly email. That person is there because they are the person to contact if you have questions about the paper. Now, you might think, oh, who's going to want to take time to talk to me about their scientific paper? Pretty much anyone who's the lead contact on a paper. As a rule, scientists love it when people take interest in their work because it lets them talk shop. So,
yes.
Yeah, they love that.
So if you can't find it on Google Scholar, you can't find it on academia.edu or Brill, you could go to a library. If you're not able to go to a library, you can just email them because people love talking about their nerd stuff.
Mm-hmm. And actually, even if the paper isn't
all that work.
Yeah.
You put in all this work and you did all this research and spent all these hours and hours and hours, you're going to want to engage with people over it because it makes you feel like you actually accomplished
and even
more than just sitting in a room.
Even if the paper isn't publicly available, you can often get a copy directly from the authors if you email them and request it. Because they have copies. They can send them out. You don't even have to pay that. Oh! I'll take a drink for Godzilla.
Hello.
All right, here we go.
And this is what they have had on their Science and homepage, a Science and Nature homepage. The appendix has no known function in humans. Evidence suggests that our evolutionary ancestors used their appendixes to digest tough food like tree bark. But we don't use ours in digestion.
When was that written?
It was accessed in 2010. Well, that's a good question. When was it written? So let's see if we can find that out. This is the BBC. Of course, we don't get the name. Oh, yeah, we don't get the name of the article, which would be handy.
Science and Nature homepage. Okay.
Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to Google the actual quotation. Let's see. The appendix has no known function in humans, BBC.
Audience, this is not how you do a citation for a website.
No, it's not. Let's see. The appendix has... So this is from... That can't be right. Because this says it's 2014, but he says he accessed it in 2010. That can't... Unless he's a time traveler, that can't work. Nope. I mean, that's the page I'm seeing, but when was this written? Huh. That's weird. It doesn't actually seem to have a date on it, so I can't say when it was made. That's odd. I mean, it says 24 September 2014, but, I mean, unless he's lying about the date that he accessed it.
Update.
Yeah, that was probably the last time it was updated. So yeah, I don't know. That's weird.
Grady Dalton says he found it.
Do you know what date it had on it? Because the only date I'm seeing on this is I'm seeing this page has been archived and is no longer updated. Which, yeah, you know what that means is it's no longer the up-to-date source on this. Let's just take a drink for using a source that on its own says, yeah, don't use this source. This is just for archival purposes.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, BBC got something wrong.
Thank you, cross-platform adventures. SciShow cited a study saying local honey can't help with allergies because it doesn't contain enough pollen. I think that study was wrong. They only focused on the pollen. If I believe it is true, then the power of my brain will make it true.
All right. So for 5 Kiwi bucks, David Durham says, do you think creationists will ever comprehend vestigial does not mean has no function? No, it's in their best interest not to. Look, I don't know who first said it, but I first heard it from Aaron Ra, and I do agree with it, although I do sometimes disagree with Aaron Ra on some things. It's hard to make a man understand something when his paycheck depends on him not understanding that thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, creationists, at least professional creationists, right? They have a vested interest, a monetary interest, not just a psychological interest, in not understanding this. I don't think they will. That's one of the reasons why, like, I'm not out here to reach professional creationists, or even most creationist YouTube types. I don't think they're reachable. They don't want to know the truth. They're not concerned with things like evidence. If I'm going to reach creationists, I'm going to reach ones who are... That's just what they've been taught. They haven't really been informed any better. And they are willing to look at things like evidence. And I have talked to some of those. I've actually had, creationists come and say, hey, I used to be a creationist. You're part of the reason I'm not anymore. So, I mean, I have accomplished that in some cases. Probably not as many as I would like, but... And apparently that quote
Yours truly.
Apparently, according to FSM the dog, that quote is ultimately from Upton Sinclair. I will almost certainly forget that, but I will try not to. Isn't he? Oh. And we got 5 memberships from, who was it? Oh, Too Old to Feel This Young. They were gifted to Wayne Gaffney, Luigi Potter, Trail Mix, Tyler West, Fred Thurbin. So we will take 5 drinks. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. There we go. Thank you. And everybody send... Vishanti, don't send the pelagic tunicates. It's the tetrapod. What is wrong with you today?
If you didn't want us to send tunicates, you wouldn't have made it.
Look, but there's a specific emoji for welcoming new members, and it's the tetrapod.
Nope, too bad. Too bad.
I hate my life. Even my
You did it to
co-host
yourself.
is inflicting the pelagic tunicates upon me.
The pelagic tunicate that you spent time in Blender making and then uploaded of your own free will.
Well, I was coerced.
That's unwelcome nuance.
Yes, it is. Okay, here we go. If you guys don't know what the unwelcome nuance thing is, check my pinned tweet. It's right in there.
Yes, for now. Some scientists believe that the appendix will disappear from the human body.
I'm not a scientist, but I do agree. I think the appendix is probably on the way out. Although,
Okay.
unless so here's the other thing. If appendicitis tends to happen after your reproductive career, then evolution really doesn't care. So maybe not. Maybe that's not something it's going to see. Dr. Tapioca Weasel has
No
informed
tropical weasel.
me that if I unwrench you, he can mute you. It's an
You
interesting
can meet me in the
proposition.
side chat.
Well, yes,
but-
it's true. You could just chant pelagic tunicate here. Although I could mute you from here, though, so there is that.
You could. Stop silencing me.
Everybody's censoring Vishanti, and it's not okay.
Well, I've just proven to you this is utter nonsense.
You've proven the first part is utter. Yeah, you've shown that the first sentence is nonsense. You haven't shown anything about the rest of it. For instance, is the appendix actually a vestigial vermiform cecum that was used to digest not necessarily tree bark, but tough plant matter? I believe the actual current evidence is weighing against that, but I don't actually know. But he certainly didn't show that it isn't.
And yet, 35 years after medical journals were already demonstrating that the appendix was functional, we have this nonsense emanating from what is supposed to be the premier news source in the English-speaking world.
Again, I want a
The
citation.
English-speaking world.
The whole Anglosphere has the BBC as its one source of news. It's definitely not.
Okay. Turf Island is the premier source of Anglophone reporting. Sure it is.
I'm gonna just take a drink for the BBC is the be-all and end-all of reporting. Which, like I said, I don't consider it to be a particularly bad news source, but also, remind me again, the journals that he's talking about, those are not peer-reviewed and the BBC is, or do I have that backwards?
It can be, it's not peer-reviewed, but it can have peerage,
Okay.
as the side chat noted.
But that's not peer review.
Mm-mm.
And the medical journals are also not peer-reviewed or are peer-reviewed?
They are.
They are peer-reviewed. Okay. So one of those is where you go to find to find the latest in medical science, and the other one is where you go to not do that. Okay. And also,
The memberships.
Fred Thurbin has gifted 5 more memberships. One went to The Fallen, one went to Katie Lewis, one to Ernex, one to Shade Dragon, and one to Revenant Rye. I think I now have 4 or 5 channel members with dragon in their name. I'm gonna have to use more of the dragon avatar. So let's have 5 drinks. Here we go. 1.
Dragon! He was a dragon man. Burninating
3.
all the presidents in the death cottages.
4. And 5. Didn't Trogdor recently have his 20th birthday?
Yes.
I feel old.
Congratulations to that big beefy arm and those consummate V's.
Consummate V's. I said consummate V's.
Consummate! Oh, I felt like I was going for a little chiaroscuro.
And for all you kids who don't know what we're talking about, we're some of the olds.
Something is
I'm
terribly
an old.
Yeah, I am too.
wrong. Next slide. So let's consider another aspect of this. Because scientists abandoned the traditional Catholic creation framework for the Darwinian evolutionary framework,
Okay.
when they saw
They just
people
go puke off screen.
Seriously.
since science has, deviated from the Holy Roman Universal Catholic Church doctrine, which never changes ever, and is never wrong ever.
Despite verifiably changing.
Go suck a balloon knot, man.
The interesting thing is, there were current Catholic saints who believe things that today would get them anathematized and excommunicated. So, it's a curious little situation there.
Coming into hospitals and doctors' offices with infected appendixes, they concluded, well, of course, the appendix is a holdover from an earlier stage of evolution. It's not functional anymore. Wrong. If they had taken...
No, they didn't. They concluded that it didn't have any function because they hadn't seen any, right? And then they used the theory of evolution to explain why there would be such structures in the first place. Also, they used the theory of evolution to explain why it looked morphologically like a tiny little vermiform cecum. Okay. But then they found out that there were functions, and they said, oh, okay, there are functions. Cool. Because
Tropical
Vestigial...
Weasel says, Dapper doesn't age. Once you hit max level, you stop leveling.
Oh, okay. I wonder what max level for life is.
It's at least something in the millions.
Actually, that reminds me. I got an RPG where technically there aren't levels, but there's character advancement. But also, as you go, you can also acquire things like lingering injuries that cause further problems. You can end up with a bum knee or something, and that can actually make it easier for you to be severely injured in the future. And so the idea is eventually you want to retire that character so they can go become an NPC who can then be a quest giver in future campaigns. And so while you get more skilled, you also get more frail as you accumulate injuries and you get ancient.
So it's the Pedro Pascal RPG oops score.
Yes. So I like that idea, because if you in most RPGs like D&D, why would you ever retire a character? You're level 20. Until you die of old age, you're fine. You're gonna be great. But this one's no. Remember that time that someone tore out ligaments from your knee, and now you have a bum knee, and then someone burned part of your face so you're partially blind? Yeah, that's going to affect you from now on. Maybe you should stop adventuring with your hordes of cash and just go rejoin society and become a normal person who just gives out quests in the future.
Retire.
Yeah, well, imagine that. The idea of having a possibility of retiring. The good old days. Oh, it's level 100, apparently. Okay, that's fair.
Oh, of course. Okay.
All right, here we go.
In the approach that William Harvey did, what question would they have asked? They would have asked, why is a perfectly good organ, which was created by God as part of the human body, giving us all these problems? And if they'd asked that question, they would have discovered that in societies where people have a healthy lifestyle, where they do not eat processed food, they have almost no disease of the appendix.
Okay, I'm going to take a drink real quick, and then we're going to talk about that a little. We're going to unpack that a little bit.
Yeah, I feel like it's a shaky foundation to build your argument on. If this organ was created by God, why does it give us problems? Because, my friend, cancer hits every organ, from your skin to your liver.
So here's another thing.
Explain.
You know what it takes to be unprocessed as food, right?
You literally have to eat it raw.
Yeah, not just raw. You need to eat it off of the thing that it grew on, right? You want to have unprocessed meat, you better bite into an actual whole animal. Because otherwise, you're processing that. It's actually one of my pet peeves is processed food doesn't mean anything, right? Humans have been processing food for literally millions of years. If you take a hunk of meat and stick it over a fire, you're processing that meat. If you take some grains that you found wild and you grind them between a couple stones so that you can put them inside of a leaf to boil some water to make a little porridge, you've processed that food. So
you're advocating for being Wendigos.
Basically. So here's the thing. Who are the people who are eating the least processed food in the world? Well, they're
Wild
basically...
animals?
Well, no, we're sticking with people, right?
Oh, people.
So they're basically the remaining hunter-gatherers are eating the least processed food, as a rule. You know why they aren't getting a whole lot of appendicitis? They tend not to live long enough. Yeah.
Yeah.
Appendicitis is something that the chances of having it increase with age. It's kind of like cancer. Not exactly like cancer, but it's also like heart disease, right? Over time, the longer you tend to live, the more likely you are to have a heart attack, to get cancer, or to get appendicitis. If the average age of your society is like 30, yeah, you're probably not going to have a high incidence of appendicitis. It's like when people are like, hey, have you been noticing how in the last 100 years the cancer rate has been going up? It's like, well, yeah, okay, so has the average life expectancy.
That's because people are living longer.
Right. Like, those are things that go hand in hand. Would you like to reduce the average life expectancy so as to reduce the cancer rate? Because I sure as heck don't. Thank you. Yeah.
Rafi says, abandoning processed food to eat dandelions directly off the ground on my hands and knees. I don't know if you've eaten, like, sunflower leaves or whatever, but those are bitter as heck.
I've had dandelion leaves.
Bitter. Dandelion leaves, yeah, both of those are just bitter.
Yeah, they're very bitter. But that's why
I had to...
You salt them.
The only reason I know that is because one year for Passover, I couldn't get the horseradish that I wanted for the Seder, so I went across the street to the Korean market and got, like, dandelion leaves.
Nice.
And I regretted it. Which means I did it right.
I've enjoyed a dandelion salad, but I had to put a fair bit of salt in there to help cut back on the bitterness. Because I don't know if you know, salt actually reduces how bitter things taste. Like, they cancel each other out. That's why you put salt in things like cake. Because have you ever had unsalted cake? Because I have. It's extremely bitter. Do not eat unsalted cake.
Like eating like 90% chocolate straight off the bar. It's like, oof.
Yeah.
I like it, but it's not for everybody.
It's intense. It's what you might call a divisive food.
I'm telling you, man, I'm 70% and up.
Evolutionary faith blinded scientists and medical researchers for more than 100 years and prevented them from looking for the true cause of diseases of the appendix, which is not in the appendix.
Well,
so
yeah, it was getting infected.
Science deviated only about 100 years ago from the infallible Holy Catholic doctrine, which never changes and has always been correct.
Apparently. Even though the origin of species was about 150 years ago. But also, an infection of the appendix, right, which is what is going to be causing appendicitis, has to be coming from outside the appendix. Because if it were already in the appendix, if it were the things that are normally in there, then it wouldn't be infected. Like, definitionally. You don't say that, like, the normal bacteria that are in your gut are infecting your gut, right? Because that's where they're supposed to be. That's the whole point.
Congenital?
Well, no, because that would mean that you were born with it.
Born with it, okay.
Yeah. Congenital is anything that you're born with. Because it means it actually comes from, like, with birth.
Mm.
Yeah. Soulcat says, didn't Kent Hovind make this argument? He's made similar arguments. Kent Hovind is also a big one for, like, the cause for basically all of our medical problems is just our diet. And if you ate way more seeds and way less hamburgers, then you would be fine. And he also seems to think that vegetarianism is the best path to go for, like, health reasons. But then he also isn't a vegetarian, and I think his reasoning for that is, I like the taste of meat, so I'm willing to sacrifice. Which, you know what? If you are fully aware of the health risks of the things that you do because you enjoy them, and you accept those, I'm not going to tell you you're not allowed to, right? Like, if you think, despite all the horrible health effects of cigarettes, what you want to do is smoke cigarettes because you prefer the shorter lifespan and the pleasure you get from cigarettes, I can't tell you not to do it, right? That's your choice. You get to make that decision for yourself. So that's one of the few areas where I'm not going to say Hovind's being a hypocrite, per se. I'm just going to say that he's decided that, according to him at least, he's going to be less healthy in exchange for the pleasure of eating meat, which I guess okay. Also, I have not seen sufficient evidence to say that vegetarianism is per se always going to be healthier than eating at least occasional meat. You can definitely go overboard with meat. That's a thing. But, yeah.
It's in the lousy diet and lifestyle that we live in industrialized societies. Now,
Which is the reason industrialized societies have the longest life expectancy. Just going to take a drink. Because look, there are plenty of unhealthy things that industrialized people do, but they still manage to live longer. Although maybe that's just having access to doctors, which I think is part of a lifestyle. I think having access to doctors is part of the industrialized lifestyle. So, anyway. And also, I'm not saying that there isn't a lot of problems with our current, first world food distribution system and food processing systems, and that there aren't a lot of unhealthy foods out there that perhaps people should avoid. That's also the case, right? We're saying you can't lay all of this at well, darn it, modern people are eating too many hamburgers and potato chips. No, that's not the cause of appendicitis.
next.
I will say, Space Dragon, I have a couple of ticks already. I took quote mine because he quoted the front page of the BBC.
So
He
weird.
also said something about evolutionary faith, so I counted that as quote mine, and science requires faith.
Yeah, Vadim says that it's also due to antibiotics. No MD can do much without medicines. Yeah, I mean, that's a big part of it too, is just we've developed actual things that actually help improve your health that you can take and just ingest them, and then they will help. Also, I am noticing that about 32 people have not hit like. Please do hit like, it really helps the channel out.
And this is why a recent study in the British Journal of Surgery concluded that societies that do not eat processed food,
Which would be none. My guess is that they had a much more clear definition that they were using. They might have even used different words.
societies that don't eat junk food and
I
have
wanna
a
see
healthy
that
life.
study.
Yeah, well, I'm wondering if he's going to cite it, because currently this is a citation needed sort of a situation. Because, but hey, you know what? You can talk about a study and then give the citation after you've talked about it a little bit. So we're going to give him the benefit of the doubt.
Lifestyle have very little or no disease of the appendix. Next slide.
No citation. Just
All right, then.
a study once said. Okay, I'm taking a drink for a study. Which study, dude? What?
The reason I
volume
want a
was it
citation
published
is
in?
I want to know what their definition of processed is.
Same, because I'll bet it's not just any processing. It might be things like
Nah.
the bleaching of flour, which, removes basically everything except the starch.
Or nixtamalization, when you're
Hmm,
making stuff out of corn for masa flour and whatever.
All right.
So we see Darwinian presumption of dysfunction leads to very bad science, which actually
We actually have not seen that. We've seen you claim that, be dishonest about it, incorrectly quote things, quote the wrong things to back you up. We haven't actually heard you demonstrate that.
costs human lives and causes human suffering. Next slide. Here's our second example, the tonsils. Now, tonsils were another part of the body which the evolutionary elite were certain were dysfunctional. They had no function. They were a holdover from an earlier stage of evolution. And consequently, next slide, by the 1930s, in the United States alone, 1 to 2 million tonsillectomies were performed every year. When I was a little boy,
Oh, and
Not one.
for $1.99, Apocalypse Meow says, nice feeders. They are very nice feeders. This is one of 2 sets that you have, right? You have 4 sets of feeders? We've only seen half of them on stream?
Mhm.
Wow. Well, we are currently 14% of the way to getting to see, would hope, the next set.
We shall see.
All right.
if you got a couple of infections and your tonsils got inflamed, it was a sure thing, 90% of the time, that your pediatrician would recommend that you have your tonsils removed.
Focus.
That's what happened to me. That meant putting millions of young children under general anesthesia to have their tonsils removed.
Oh no,
Well,
not
this made
general anesthesia.
So here's the thing about this, right?
Scary.
There has been a function identified for tonsils. They are part of the immune system, and they do in fact tend to neutralize pathogenic microbes that land on them. I don't know if you know, but the oral route to infection is still one of the most common routes to infection by various pathogens, right? It's extremely common for you to get a disease because something got in your mouth that is infectious. Tonsils prevent an extremely small fraction. They are not useless, but they're extremely close to useless. Oh, and for 5 Kiwi bucks, David Durham says, tonsils and appendix really have to be added to the Creationist bingo card. Yeah,
Yeah.
it wouldn't be a bad addition. I don't know if they come up quite often enough to make it into the mix, but they certainly would be contenders, which also puts us 20% of the way to do feeders. I just lost my train of thought a little bit. Oh, right. So the tonsils are like I said, they're next to useless. There's a tiny increase in infections for people who don't have tonsils versus adults who do. I'm missing something. What did I miss? Uh-oh.
Bone Worm says general anesthesia with his comrade Admiral Analgesic.
Oh, I see that there. Yeah. So, tonsillectomies have reduced in frequency in the last few decades. And there are good reasons for that. One of them is that the surgery is risky, and the benefits are not as great as was previously thought, right? You can have 1 or 2 infections in your tonsils and not continue to have them chronically. So now, tonsillectomies are reserved for people who are having very frequent tonsil infections, where that is actually posing a significant health problem, because it is the case that surgery is risky. And having 1 or 2 tonsil infections is actually, as it turns out, not an indication that there is some great risk to you as a result of your tonsil. And so basically all that's happened is people have gone from, oh, hey, the tonsils are a high risk, to they're actually not that risky. And so the balance of risk to reward for tonsillectomies has shifted more towards the risk side. This actually has nothing to do with the fact that they have a minor role in slightly preventing you from getting sick every once in a great while. If, in fact, tonsils were still as prone to infection as we used to think they were, they would still be routinely removed after basically the first or second infection of them. It makes almost no difference to the medical science the fact that your tonsils might prevent you from, like, 1 infectious disease every few years. Because quite frankly, that's not that much.
Do you think he's going to mention wisdom teeth?
I don't know. I hope so.
Because those are a pretty good way for us to help support the fact that humans developmentally used to be different, and that as we've evolved to our current state, our mouths are not.
I think he'll point out that there are populations who typically do not have problems with their wisdom teeth as evidence that no, it's your current diet that's giving you problems with your wisdom teeth, and they're not actually vestigial in most people.
Okay, well,
if he mentions them at all.
I still have my tonsils and my appendix and my wisdom teeth, and I don't have the greatest diet, so I guess I'm an anomaly.
You're especially blessed by God. That's what happened.
Oh, apparently, yes.
Mm-hmm. Yep. You must have taken a whole lot of Catholic communion.
I ate a lot of apricot seeds.
Oh, that's what it is.
Somehow didn't get arsenic poisoning.
Cyanide, not arsenic.
Cyanide, sorry.
Don't eat apricot seeds. This is not medical advice.
Cyanide's the one that's almond.
Almonds,
slightly
apricot.
Almondy, right?
Yeah. Oh, there's Mothra. Take a drink from Mothra.
Mothra.
Yeah.
It's sin.
I forgot to actually take a drink. Okay, here we go.
If evolution is true and the tonsils are vestigial. The only problem is, next slide, that of course, once again, evolution eventually collided with reality. And this began to happen
No, it didn't.
Especially in the 50s, when polio was a very serious problem. And doctors began to notice something very interesting. People who had had their tonsils removed were more susceptible to polio and to the kind of polio that produces paralysis. Next slide. Doctors all over the world, like this,
I love
No,
that his
hold on, we didn't
citations
get the-
Time magazine.
Yeah, I want to see what that citation is.
were more
I-
susceptible to polio and to the kind of polio that produces paralysis.
Tonsils
Amazing.
and bulbar polio from Time magazine.
Thank you this for. Famously peer-reviewed journal. Time.
So yeah, there was in the 1940s there was a Harvard Infantile Paralysis Commission that concluded that tonsillectomy has led to a significant risk of respiratory paralysis due to bulbar polio. But here's the other thing. That's the case is not why tonsillectomies are not widely given now, because we have this thing. It's called the polio vaccine. And you know what's way better at preventing polio than your tonsils are?
Polio vaccine.
A polio vaccine, exactly. So,
Oh, man. So was that 1G? The polio vaccine was 1G and the COVID one's 5G?
yes, that was when they introduced 1G back in the 50s or 60s or something. Yes. Oh man, but it is true that fewer I was about to say vasectomy. That's not it. Fewer tonsillectomies. Very different procedure. Were performed during the polio outbreak in like the 50s when it was a big deal, right? But your doctor isn't not giving you a tonsillectomy today because he's worried about polio, because chances are you got the polio vaccine. And if you didn't, maybe you should. Heck, I even got the smallpox vaccine. That's not commonly given anymore. Also a very unpleasant vaccine. Because rather than injecting you deeply with something, they put some, like, attenuated virus on a needle, and they just jab it into you a couple times.
Yeah.
And then you get an actual pox sore on the injection site that then weeps infectious pus. And you have to keep Band-Aids on it and keep changing them, or bandages or something, right? And keep changing them and washing it. Or the pus can leak to other parts of your body and infect those parts. And then you'll get additional sores there. Including your eyes.
Have a bad time.
Yeah, it's a very unpleasant vaccine experience. Although it was
Also,
less painful
not
than
on
the anthrax.
Not on this stream necessarily, but I did want to ask you about this whole core of the earth reverse spinning, direction stopped, whatever. I want to ask you about this later because one of my roommates is like, this is totally real science, you guys. And I'm like,
long story short,
out.
The core of the earth does not always line up exactly with the rotation of the earth. They're not entirely in sync, and there's been some small shift in that. The earth is not.
Oh no!
The earth is not about, like, we're not about to have the plot of The Core happen.
Yeah, God, that was such a bad movie.
So ridiculous.
It's so bad.
Yeah, I also have the scars on my arm, Vadim. I also got the anthrax shot, and that made my arm useless for like 3 days.
Ooh.
Like, it was just limp. And anytime I tried to move it, it was excruciating. I actually had to lift my arm up with my other arm to get it through shirt sleeves. Because I didn't have the actual ability to move my arm. It was rough.
Bone Worm notes, if we're looking at 1950s procedures, why don't we see how transorbital lobotomies affected polio infection?
Good question. My guess is that they didn't do too many studies on that.
Mm-hmm.
Next slide. Doctors all over the world, like this one in Australia, began to record their observations in medical journals. Next slide.
As Vadim says, lobotomies caused a raise of young Earth creationists. Ouch.
Also, this person is... He's not even quoting the direct source. He's quoting someone who's quoting somebody, apparently.
Yeah, it's always best
Dr.
practice.
So-and-so believes that a child this. So that's your citation as a guy quoting some dude.
Yeah. It's always proper procedure to not quote people directly, but to instead quote secondhand quotes of them, because that's the most reliable. It's actually, if you I don't know if it still exists, but at one point there was a website that was collecting creationist quotes, and an interesting like quote
I've
mines
seen
that they used. And an interesting thing that happened is they could actually basically use the same idea as like phylogenetic bracketing to see where certain typos or changes had been inserted into these quotes that were just being copied from one creationist document to the others to see, this quote traces back to this particular source, and I can tell because it has this typo. What is it?
I know what it is. It's
What?
the ERVs of younger creationism.
Yeah, basically,
quote
yeah.
lines.
And the thing is, like, you can trace the family tree of creationist quote mines on the basis of typos, which, interestingly enough, you can also do with biblical manuscripts and scribal errors or textual variants. You can also tell where certain manuscripts have their lineage from. Jessica, for $4.99 US, putting us 30% of the way, says, AIG are a bulbous brown burlap sack of buxom bouncing banana bundles. My goodness. That was an impressive amount of alliteration. I am hats off to you. So here's a drink for that.
Off?
Yes, top hat off to you. And that just polished off that bottle of cider. It's time to open up another bottle of cider. There it is. I think it was too quiet for everyone to hear, but there was a very satisfying little when I opened it up.
Oh, I heard it.
Yeah.
I heard it.
Yeah, but they
What
have,
cider is that?
This is an Angry Orchard crisp apple, which is sort of their signature.
Oh my god, I love Angry Orchard eels.
See, I prefer
their Granny Smith one is like...
Yeah. I prefer their unfiltered one because it's less sweet. But this is still an acceptable alternative.
I should get some Angry Orchard later on today.
Yeah, do it. Let me know, and we'll crack open an Angry Orchard together.
And watch a spook.
Yes, we could watch a spooky movie. All right, but that's not something we'll do on stream. In part because we would get copyright claimed to hell. Unless I guess we could watch The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari on stream. I'm pretty sure that's public domain.
Do that.
And eventually, again by the 1970s, mainstream medical journals were recognizing that people who have their tonsils removed were 3 to 5 times more likely to succumb to paralysis from polio.
Yeah, that's true. We'll take a drink. I don't know exactly about the numbers, but it is true that is a thing that happened, and it is a reason that in the 50s and 60s, tonsillectomies were reduced. Not the reason you're not getting them here in 2020.
I was going to say that Apocalypse Meow says only evolutionists believe orchards can be angry.
I actually like the bottle art where it has like the angry face on the apple tree, like the gnarly apple tree.
Yeah.
It's really amusing.
Yeah.
Hashtag not sponsored, but Angry Orchard, if you want to sponsor me, I'll put in an Angry Orchard commercial at the beginning of my videos. I don't care.
Next slide. And so today,
I know we're looking at surgical equipment, but like, again, this is why you turn the lights off near the screen you're projecting onto.
So amateurish.
Yeah, the percentage is how close we are to the next feeders. We're currently, technically we're slightly over 30%.
3302 away.
today, any doctor worth his salt.
Well, not quite, because you're adding some of the non-US dollars as just whole dollars.
I'm just taking I'm literally taking exactly the digits. We're 3302 away.
But I have 1529 as the current super chat revenue because of exchange rates.
Counting exchange rates.
All right, fine.
Why are you doing that? Wait, don't be extra about it.
I'm looking at the literal
it'll
number.
It'll be more than 50.
I'm looking at the literal number that YouTube is giving me.
I looked at the colored box. It says $4.99 US, so I'm taking that as $4.99.
Right, but
I'm
what are you doing
absolute numbers, Dapper.
But what are you doing with $5 New Zealand?
5.
But that's not what that number is.
That's 5. Just say it's the absolute numbers. Oh my gosh.
Okay. All right. What if someone gives like 1,000 yen though? What number does
I'm
that
being
go?
more gracious to the chat than you are.
Okay, but what if someone gives 1,000 yen?
Because the New Zealand dollars don't have the same value as US dollars.
Drink from water.
Gosh.
But the question remains, what if someone super chats like 1,000 yen?
Then we hit the goal.
But that's like $1.
I didn't specify it had to be US dollars.
It's not even dollars at all.
I just said 50.
50
$50.
50 of
I
currency
didn't
unit.
specify which denomination.
Guys, go get your Japanese friends to go donate 50 yen. So that way, for like the price of
donate
like half a penny.
50 Korean won.
Yeah, there you go.
Or a Chilean real.
Oh, goodness.
Well, knows.
Someone's going to donate 50 Zimbabwe dollars, and I'm going to get like a tenth of a cent.
No, man, that's like Mexican pesos. It's like $50 in Mexican pesos would be like 12 cents.
I'm glad you guys like this tangent.
Zimbabwe dollars, though.
Zimbabwe. Remember when their finance minister came out and said they were going to no longer calculate their annual inflation rate because computers couldn't calculate numbers that high? Like,
yeah, I think you got a problem there.
Oh, okay.
Boneworm says Republic credits are no good here.
Oh,
yes.
Poor Zimbabwe.
Oh, poor Zimbabwe.
That the tonsils are part of our immune system. And in fact, the tonsils produce specific antibodies that protect us, among other things, from polio.
That's true. I'll take a drink. They do. It is absolutely true. Also, for $5 US, Savage Cobra says AIG is a peck of pelvic pickles packed in a pocket. Nice.
Nice.
Even more alliteration.
Very good.
That is nice, yeah.
That's one of those good old Peter Piper picked a peck of pickle peppers.
Wow, good job.
Hashtag theater kid.
So by having millions of children based on evolutionary faith, not science, stripped...
There you go. There's the science requires faith bingo again.
Oh, goodness. I'll take a drink. It's dumb.
Oh, dumb.
front lines of their immune system, we will never know how many hundreds of thousands or millions of people may have suffered serious repercussions because of that misguided anti-science.
First, it wasn't anti-science, nor was it misguided. There was missing information, which rejecting evolution wouldn't have helped with, because medical science requires there to actually be data. The data indicated that tonsillectomies were probably a good idea. And then new data came about with a new wave of a disease that had not been previously as prominent. Because, you don't go through history and just see lots and lots of polio, right? There were polio outbreaks. So, yeah, no.
Next slide.
Bone worms like
And so
millions
this
of
is-
space children.
Oh, yeah. But also, we actually probably could calculate, right? So, if your chances of getting or becoming paralyzed as a result of bulbar polio is 3 times higher, then you take the number of tonsillectomies as like what proportion of the population. You can then assume that that's probably the same for the people who were paralyzed, right? So you take that proportion out, then you multiply that by 0.6 repeating, and that's how many people probably suffered as a result of tonsillectomies and then went on to become paralyzed when they otherwise would not have. I mean, you can find that number. Now, is it going to be exact down to the person? Well, no, of course not. But, like, you can find that number. It's not going to be impossible.
This is mainstream medicine today. This is what any medical practitioner worth his or her salt knows, that your tonsils are an important part of your immune system and always have been. Next.
Again, important's a bit of a stretch. There is one important disease that they're particularly important for, but it's also one of those diseases that we have this thing called a vaccine for, which means that ultimately today it doesn't really matter. Also, we could be eliminating polio, but polio is complicated. You know that people can get the disease from people who have the vaccine who themselves don't have the vaccine, if you use a particular kind of the polio vaccine that actually uses live viruses. one of the reasons why the polio vaccine is they're trying to shift it worldwide to a different form of the polio vaccine that can't cause vaccine-induced polio. So one of the problems with polio is it's hard to eradicate because of the fact that one of the vaccines can actually cause polio in unvaccinated people when the vaccinated people take it, which I'm sure is, feeding into anti-vax propaganda. So, yeah. The world
I love that the citation is medscape.com.
Goodness. So
another titan in peer-reviewed literature.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, like world organizations that are like advocating for vaccines and like the World Health Organization are currently in the process of trying to get the whole world to shift over to the polio vaccine that does not use live viruses and that will therefore not cause secondary infections in unvaccinated people. So, yeah. Hopefully, by the end of the century or so, we could possibly actually see the complete eradication of polio. That'd be nice.
It would be nice.
Yeah. Yeah, as Boneworm says, that's the vaccine shedding that anti-vaxxers freak out over. Yes, and they also freak out over it in vaccines where it doesn't happen. Because this is essentially unique to like polio and to some extent the smallpox vaccine. You can actually get an infection from someone's infected body fluids that are coming out of the vaccine sore from a polio vaccine or a smallpox vaccine. Like if someone has a smallpox vaccine and they still have the sore, and you touch the pus from that sore, you can develop a sore. The solution to this is don't touch other people's open sores. Don't do that. It's a really bad idea to touch other people's open sores. John Smith for €5 says AIG is a sack of storing 6-core sagging sausages. All right. Take a drink for that. Thank you very much. So how many dollars is a euro?
It's like $1.20 maybe.
Okay.
Also, I did the conversion on dollars to pesos. So 50 pesos is $2.68 US.
Slide. Now, once again, because
I
of
was
this
off.
evolutionary...
It's $1.07. Ha ha!
faith, which blinded scientists and medical researchers to the truth.
Okay, look, this is what bugs me. I'm taking a drink. This bugs me. I'm going to have to take a drink to talk about this. Give me a second.
Oh my goodness.
Okay.
We might need to take a break.
Yeah, we'll take a break right after I go on about this for a bit.
Okay.
We're the scientists who made the discovery that tonsillectomies were correlated with worse polio outcomes, or even out proportionately creationists, anti-evolutionists. Probably not. And you know why I think that? Because he hasn't pointed out that the ones who made the discovery were. So when he's saying like, oh, this is a result of adopting evolution, and if we didn't do that, then we would have figured this out earlier. Show it. There were Catholic doctors in the 1940s and 50s. I don't know if you know, but Catholics have been becoming doctors basically since there were Catholics. Heck, St. Luke the Evangelist is said to have been a doctor.
Yeah, exactly.
So, like, now, the actual historical existence of this person is a little... Although I will say that the author of Luke and Acts, which do seem to be the same person, was better educated than the authors of basically the rest of the New Testament. So there is that.
I was going to say, isn't there like a marked quality change in the Greek that they're writing in?
Yeah, Luke and Acts are like... He's basically like the college level writer in terms of his Greek, and the rest of the New Testament is sort of written at like... Not like the dumb kid
like
at high school, but like, it's just like, you're not...
Conversational.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Luke has sort of the professional Greek, and his Greek is actually more similar to like the classical Greek that you might read in like Homer or something. It's not actually classical Greek. It's still obviously Koine Greek, but he has like an elevated style. He's more likely to use fancy sentence structures, things like that. So anyway.
Dude went to school.
Yeah, basically. So, like, there have always been well-educated Christians, and at least according to Catholic theology, there have been doctors among Christians from the beginning. So how come he's not crediting the good Catholic doctors who had the creationist mindset with making this discovery and pointing out how only the evolutionists were railing against it? Because that's not what happened. By and large, all the people who were in the medical community were still accepting the scientific consensus, which at the time wasn't as strongly Darwinian as what he would call it as it is now. It wasn't as strongly what we would currently think of as like the modern evolutionary synthesis. But still, so yeah. Corny Greek, no, koine, it's
Corny Greek, koine.
Koine is usually how I see it spelled. In Greek, that would be kappa, omicron, iota, nu, eta. And I think the eta gets a little accent acute on it, if I remember correctly. So that's where the accent falls, is on the last eta. Yay for me remembering a little bit of my Greek that I studied way back in the day. All right, we're going to take a quick break. Guys, stick with us. While we're gone, please do hit the like button. You can chill out with the musical stylings of Beethoven, no relation, while I get myself another cider. And we are back. Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for sticking with me, those of you who did. As a quick thing right after the intermission, I want to point out that please do check out the Patreon if you can afford it and you are interested. If you're not either of those, then please don't. But if you are, it really helps out the channel. One of my goals for this year is to make it so that the channel is sustainable just on the Patreon. Because, as you know, YouTube is very unreliable. They could just take away my monetization just like that, for basically any reason, and I have no recourse other than saying, please sir, could I have it back now? And they can just say, no. So, if we could get the channel to that point, that would be amazing. And, yeah, so please check that out. It starts at $1 a month, or you can go annual for, I believe, a 12% discount, and that gets you to, like, 10-something a month. And it goes all the way up to, like, $100 a month if you want to be absurdly generous, which, to be fair, a few people have. There are increasing rewards as you go.
I would prefer the Patreon, because I know that you get a bigger cut.
Significantly bigger, yeah.
But they don't want us to use the cool emojis in the chat, man.
No, I know. Look, if you had a certain amount that you wanted to give and you wanted to split it between the membership and the Patreon, I would suggest doing the minimum on the membership and then doing the balance on Patreon. So, like, if you were someone who was like, I would like to give like $10 a month, go into like the minimum membership, which I think is $1.99 a month, and then go like the $5 tier or something on Patreon. But that's not really why we're here. We're here to continue on with the Catholic thing, and I don't want to make this a big commercial. So, you guys already watched commercials, because, well, I inserted some, because, again, channel is self-sustaining, I want to keep it that way.
When people came in to doctors' offices with blocked air passages and infected tonsils, what did they do?
Often a tonsillectomy. Now, in this case, if it's actually blocking your air passages, yeah, maybe take that out.
That's a different problem.
You know, it's a much more immediate and acute problem that you might suffocate than that maybe down the road you might be paralyzed from polio. Because
I'm like, if they come in and it's blocking your airways, I think the first thing they're going to do is try to intubate you. But
right,
yeah, it's just me. I'm not a doctor.
Here's one of the things. Suffocating now will mean that you won't be paralyzed from polio later. But I still feel like maybe you should just not suffocate now. Like, you know, I'm pro-breathing as a rule. Right? There are exceptions, right?
Yeah.
But, like, all things being equal, no extenuating circumstances, Dapper Dino is officially pro-breathing. Just
Glad that we
out
have
there.
you on record.
Yes.
There.
Very important. Yeah. All right, here we go.
They put the blame on the tonsils. The tonsils are a holdover from an earlier stage of evolution. Let's solve the problem by having them removed. Very misguided.
No,
I mean, I was gonna say removing body parts to keep yourself, you know, at top functioning order is actually very biblical. In fact, Jesus advocated for, you know, removing your eyeballs if they're causing you problems. So I don't see what the deal is.
Yeah, that is true. There was an eyeballectomy, which I don't actually know if there's an official term for moving eyeball, but yeah. Or also, you know, just chopping your own hand off. That was what was causing the problem.
Chop your hand off.
Yeah,
just saying.
And hey, I mean, if we want to go back into like the Pentateuch, there's definitely some required, you know, tissue removal in there. So
yeah.
Soul Cat is. Are you a breatharian? No. I'm not.
Breatharian.
I'm not anti-eating.
No one's actually a breatharian.
Yeah, there is that. Well, no one stays a breatharian for long, for one reason or another.
They say they are, but
no, well, there was the British lady who gave up very quickly after becoming a breatharian and realizing that she was going to die. So
weird.
I would say no one stays a breatharian long for one of two reasons. Either they die, or they realize they're about to die, so they stop being a breatharian. But no, I'm not a breatharian. I am just in favor of breathing, but also in favor of eating at least enough calories to continue to not die. I'm in favor of both of these things at the same time. I'm doing the advanced technique of being pro more than one thing. You
also,
gotta...
the Kilogram says that God says the foreskin is vestigial. Only Jewish foreskins are vestigial.
There you go. But also, mean, it's not actually vestigial. It does do things, although what it does is not exactly vital, as evidenced by the continued existence of Jewish people, and also Arabs and large portions of other cultures. Like a lot of North Africans also practice routine infant circumcision.
Yep.
It actually was probably not invented by the ancient Hebrews. It was probably a wider cultural practice.
I know the Egyptians were doing it before them.
Yeah. Which also means it's not as good a indication of Hebrewness as the Old Testament might make you think it is.
Gasp!
Yeah. Yeah.
You mean history existed before the Bible was written?
As it turns out, yes. Yes, it did. Even before Genesis was written, even though that's supposed to be the start of history. Weird, right? Oh, and Tesla Ranger says, remove the eyeball is called enucleation. Well, there you go. Jesus was pro-nucleation sometimes. Or maybe he was being metaphorical. I don't really know. I'm not a theologian. Consult your local priest.
Consult your local evangelical for the very literal interpretation of that.
Actually, even they tend not to be very literal about that, which is curious, isn't it? You don't see a whole lot of one-eyed, one-handed evangelicals out there.
One-eyed, one-horn, flying purple people eater.
This is an orthodontist, Dr. Silkman, who wrote a fascinating article pointing out that your soft tissues are genetically programmed to grow to a certain size.
So the guy who straightens out your teeth, I'm going to take a drink for the orthodontist says that your soft tissues are pre-programmed.
I'm going to bingo expert in the wrong field there.
Yeah, that's, yeah. You know, my pa, the pig farmer, once said, that's basically what we're getting right now.
I know.
Not that pig farmers are dumb, right? Just saying, it's not the same field as, you know, general medicine or ontology.
But your bony structures are not genetically programmed to grow to a certain size.
Neither of those things. Okay, look. Your genetics determine a size range that you're supposed to get to given adequate nutrition. Malnourishment can cause you to fall below that, and being well nourished can cause you to get to the maximum of that. But yeah, so it's not like your soft tissues have a determinate size and then your bones don't. You might notice, but most say, like, I don't know, midgets. They tend not to be just giant bags of skin and organs that just flop around because they're just all their internals are just kind of falling all over the place because it can't be contained inside
little people.
Yeah, sorry.
Supposed to be the preferred terminology.
It's changed like at least twice in like the last few decades, so I'm not sure. If you're under,
if there are any in the chat, let us know.
Yeah, I remember when it was dwarf.
Yeah, I remember that too.
Yeah. So, take a quick second to talk about the euphemism treadmill. The euphemism treadmill is a thing where you refer to something with what the current polite version is, but then because people still think of the thing as a bad thing, the current polite version just becomes the new version of the insult, and then you come up with a new polite version. The way to get off the euphemism treadmill is to stop thinking of the thing as a bad thing that's worth using as an insult.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, there you go. We should stop thinking of things like being very, very short as a thing that is insulting. Then we can get off of the midget treadmill, the euphemism treadmill, and we can just stop having to keep up with the latest thing because no one will be thinking of the current thing as an insult. Anyway.
Bodybuilders know that, right? Their bones aren't just going to get bigger.
Actually, they do. They don't tend to get longer, but they get bulkier.
They actually do.
So we'll take a drink for bodybuilders know that their bones won't get bigger, except that, yes, they absolutely do.
It's actually true, like, they do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because you have a way to support all the extra muscle and fatty tissue. Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, so as you exercise, right, in addition to building back up your muscles, it actually puts additional strain on your bone, and it actually can cause microfractures in the bone. And if that's repeated, what happens is that the osteoblasts will actually fill in new bone, and your bones will get bulkier as you bodybuild. Now, your legs won't get longer or something, right? But the muscle attachment points will change in size. So, like, yeah, no, it's not true.
Because they sit and wish that they would. You have to exercise. But so what happens when you have generations of people who live a very unhealthy lifestyle? They don't get enough exercise, they don't do enough physical labor, and they eat junk food.
They get fat.
You call them Americans.
Well, yeah. I mean, they become overweight. But the thing is,
Waka waka.
being overweight is a matter of primarily your adipose tissue. Not your muscles, not your tonsils, not your lungs. None of these are changing in size. Now, your muscles will change in
And
size
not your
a little
appendix.
bit. Yeah, not your appendix. Now, your muscles will change a little bit because they're going to have to, at least get to the point where they can support your current level of activity if you're overweight. So, you might have, like, stronger calf muscles than you otherwise would because it takes more energy to move you around as you walk. So, ignoring that minor aspect, it's primarily your adipose tissue that's getting bigger in this case. Not going to affect your tonsils or your appendix. Well, I mean, it might affect your appendix if you are sunlight prone to disease because of your weakened immune system, because you're generally unhealthy. But, yeah.
I'll tell you what happens. Their soft tissues will still grow to the genetically predetermined size, but their bony structures will not.
Oh my god, that is so dumb. That is so dumb.
Did you see my soul just leave my body for a second?
Yeah, you went exterior, as the Scientologists might say. Okay. So, let's talk about how...
I need a purification rundown.
Oh no, that's way too much niacin. Could actually die.
Yeah.
People have gone to the hospital as a result of purification rundowns in Scientology. Like, it's
Watch
not a
that
healthy thing.
stream with Chris Shelton, folks. It's a good one.
Yeah,
It's also very horrifying.
Yeah, Chris Shelton and I did a stream about the pseudoscientific beliefs of Scientology, mostly ignoring like the purely spiritual stuff, like, are you going to be reincarnated into a new body because you're actually an immortal Thetan who has godlike powers but just doesn't realize it? I don't care. However, I do care that you shouldn't eat 5 or 10 grams of pure niacin. You definitely should not do that. Not a doctor,
Also,
but still.
Boneworm is correct. He says this is some Lamarckian nonsense.
Mm-hmm. So Savage Cobra for $5 says, AIG is a mendacious multitude of men's miscellaneous medial members of maximum magnitude mustered in a measured mailbag. Holy crap. That is amazing. Thank you very much.
Damn.
Yeah, we're taking a drink for that. That's really good. Okay, so let's talk about development of bones and soft tissue in embryo. So, and this is also what determines your ultimate soft tissue size. So when you're growing as a little baby fetus, which is redundant, I know, that's okay. What's happening is essentially you have gradients of what amount to hormones, right? And so things like your nervous system and your circulatory system will extend branches based on the local gradient. And they'll stop doing that when they get to the certain concentration that tells them, hey, this is enough. Similar things happen with your bones, right? So your bones start off as cartilage, but they give little hormonal signals to your various other tissues that are developing that say, hey, we need you to develop a muscle attachment point here. And then you start expanding outwards until you get to the point where the gradient of these hormones say, okay, this is where you stop and form another muscle attachment, right? So however long your bones are, or how long your soft tissues are going to grow to. And then as you get older, the attachment of your various soft tissues to both one another and your skeleton is what determines the size of both of your soft tissues, with the exceptions of things like your skin and adipose tissue, which can expand additionally because they're used for energy storage for long-term use. But your muscles aren't, your tonsils aren't, your appendix isn't. None of this is true of any of those things. And also, we had a gifted membership from Dr. Tapioca Weasel, which went to Who Richards? I'm not sure. Was gifted a membership, so congratulations. Send in some of those tetrapods. Thank you very much.
Tickets.
Anyway, here we go. This really is. I think we actually just approached like almost an entire Hovend. Like,
Yeah, we're almost to an entire Hovend of stupid.
Yeah, this right there, this part is hovering in like the 900 millihovend range.
What's going to happen?
0.9 Hovens.
You're going to have people whose tonsils are now too big for the bony structures that house them.
No, just
You're
Imagine
going to have people susceptible
it's the lady
to
in the
infection
radiator from Eraserhead,
because-
just like
you know, we're gonna have to make
Oh
like
my
the
God.
we're gonna have to make like the Dapper and Vishanti stream like watch list of like, here's media you should
inside
watch
jokes and film
if you
references.
want to
Yeah.
understand all the references, right? Like, watch Eraserhead, watch like Possession, watch Skinamarink, watch all of these things, and then maybe you'll understand all the references.
All of our references. Yeah.
Anyway,
they're eating rotten, processed junk food.
junk food and rotten food
It's
aren't the
literally not rotten.
same. Let's take a drink and we'll go over the difference between rotten and junk food.
Like, I know he meant distasteful, but it's literally not rotten.
Mm-hmm. So junk food.
It's not rotten food. You can't sell rotted food.
So junk food is usually food that is relatively high calories, but relatively low in any other nutrients, right? So potato chips are basically just a bunch of fat and starch. They don't have a bunch of minerals. They don't have a bunch of vitamins. It's basically just a bunch of starch, which gets broken down into your body, basically into sugar, and a bunch of fat. That's junk food. Rotten food has actually started to be digested by other organisms who are then secreting toxins into the food, which will negatively affect you by poisoning you. Now, maybe not to the point of death, but still. Lady Moon Webb says, what do you think is the most number of times the same word can be repeated in a sentence and it will still make sense? I mean, there's always buffalo, 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 which is what? Buffalo, 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 5? If you're going for in the row. Now, if you're just saying the same word at all.
No.
What do we got?
That was
Oh,
my
that was the whole
answer.
thing? Well, that's not really a sentence, though.
No.
That's not a sentence.
No, it's a complete sentence.
No.
I will argue for that.
No, there's
Yes.
there's no predicate.
Doesn't have to be.
That's one of the rules of sentences.
If you ask someone a question and they say no, that is a complete sentence.
No, it's a good answer. It's not a complete sentence.
That is a complete sentence.
We will have to ask a grammarian later.
I will spam you with pelagic tunicates.
You're doing that anyway.
Correct.
This is not a change. So yeah, if you mean in a row, and it's like, so the sentence has to have the same word in a row, then I do believe buffalo, 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 buffalo is in fact the longest string that you can do in English. Now, if you just mean how many words that are the same word can you put in any sentence of any length with any number of clauses, I don't think there's a limit. Because technically there's no limit to how many subordinate clauses you can put in an English sentence. Now, there is a practical limit that at a certain point people are going to forget what your main clause was. But technically, I don't believe there is actually a limit. John Smith says...
Boneworm says there's no predicate, but there is a tunicate.
I hate it so much. John Smith for €5 says, AIG is an assortment of andrological appendages arranged in an accommodating attaché. Very nice. Very nice. Although you're missing the accent on the final E in attaché. Guys, come on. You gotta give me that final accent. Now people are all
Windows
spamming
users,
me.
you can hit... For any Windows users, you can hit the Alt key on your keyboard and then push 0243, and that'll give you the accent to be.
There you go. I always just...
Sorry, it's not 0243, it's 0233, my bad.
Oh.
0243 is the O with an accent. My bad.
I always just search like E acute accent on like Google and copy paste it because I can never remember
You
that
just need to learn
keystroke.
keyboard shortcuts, man.
Look, you do it a lot more than I
0243
do.
is the O, 0237 is the I, 0252 is the U with like umlaut.
Oh, you do it so much more than I
0241
do.
is till the N.
So
Yeah.
like I just look because it's so rare that I actually care to put the like,
0225 is
accent.
the A.
Wait, A with what accent?
The like Spanish A accent.
Oh, with the acute accent.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because Spanish only uses acute, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're not big into like circumflex or anything like that.
Yeah, no, they don't use circumflex, and they don't use I can't remember the upside down bowl. Like Romanian uses that one quite a bit.
I don't even remember what that one's called.
I don't either, but yeah.
All right. Anyway, also, sometimes English does use the diaeresis mark, which is identical to the umlaut. And it's unusual, but it's used to indicate that two vowels which would otherwise either form a diphthong or would indicate like a long vowel or something like that are actually to be read separately as separate vocalic vowels. So, for instance, if you wanted to say re-enter, you can put the diaeresis over the second E to indicate that it's not re-enter, it's re-enter.
Oh shit!
And they're not in good.
Also, naive often has the diaeresis over the I.
Yeah,
so it's not naive, it's naive.
Physical condition. And so what does the medical community do for generations? It deals with the problem by removing the tonsils.
And then no one who was apparently a creationist was like, guys, this is a bad idea, which means that this entire idea just doesn't fit with your thing. And also, I don't know if you guys know, but there are creationist doctors, and they tend to be just as likely to yank organs as anybody else.
That is the consequence of embracing this evolutionary faith and abandoning the traditional creation framework.
Next big old citation on that one there, buddy.
Now, this may be the...
You notice that with the circulatory system that we saw last time, right? He actually gave a quote from the doctor saying that, oh, I figured that there was some purpose behind this. And then he pointed out that this doctor was a good Catholic. He didn't even try with that for the polio and tonsillectomies. He didn't even try, which means he couldn't find it. Which means it probably doesn't exist. Because if anyone would be motivated to find such a quote, it would be this man.
Last example that I'll be able to give, and I might have to fast forward to the conclusion, but this is an extremely important example for you to understand. These drawings were made by a famous German anatomist named Ernst Haeckel. I should say an infamous...
Oh, God, we're getting Ernst Haeckel.
We're going to Ernst Haeckel.
I'm just going to take a preemptive drink I know this is about to be moronic.
I'm going to step away. I'm going to go to the bathroom while he's doing this.
We had a whole break for you to go to the bathroom. What is this?
Maybe I didn't have to go then.
You should have tried. It's like dealing with a 4-year-old getting into a car for a road trip. My goodness. All right, let's get some more Ernst Haeckel while we look at Vishanti's Lego collection. All right, here we go.
German anatomist named Ernst Haeckel, who was a disciple of Darwin.
I hate the word disciple, because it's obviously trying to implicate that this is a religious thing, rather than just Ernst Haeckel, who, by the way, was more of a science communicator than a scientist himself, was just like, no, I think this hypothesis or theory is true.
And Haeckel argued that a very good proof of the truth of the evolutionary hypothesis was that the human embryo resembles the embryos of chickens, pigs, fish, salamanders at different stages of its embryonic development.
Which it manifestly does, regardless of Haeckel, right? It absolutely does. Most people cannot tell you at early stages whether a human embryo is a human embryo or a pig embryo or a dolphin embryo or a salamander embryo or a lizard embryo. Because they're not easily distinguishable at very early stages. And interestingly, the point at which they become easily distinguishable also supports the nested hierarchy. It's much harder to tell apart a well-advanced human embryo from a gorilla embryo than it is to tell apart a human embryo and a sheep embryo at the same point of development. And it's harder to tell apart a human embryo and a lizard embryo at that middling stage than it is a human embryo and a fish embryo. And it's actually pretty easy very early on to tell the difference between a human embryo and a squid embryo. But when they're at the point where they're just a ball of cells, a blastula, that hasn't actually had, the blastopore develop, it's essentially impossible to tell them apart. So again, embryology follows the exact same nested hierarchy as adult morphology and genetics. Curious, isn't it?
So,
weird.
Heketa says, do they all taste the same?
I think that most of the flavor of an embryo would probably depend on the various fluids that they develop in. So that's one of the reasons like why like fish roe don't taste the same as chicken eggs, because the chicken eggs has the amniotic fluid in like the white of the egg, whereas fish embryos don't have that same fluid. So I would say that probably depends on the chemical composition of the surrounding fluids. So, but now I kind of want fish roe. Maybe I'll go get sushi later.
Eggs.
What about the orange ones?
Egg.
That come in the sushi? You get the little orange fish roe. That's what I kind of want.
And so he popularized this idea of embryonic recapitulation, that the human embryo recapitulates, or
not just the human embryo, that embryos generally, this wasn't just for humans,
or goes through all the stages of our evolutionary history in the womb of our mother.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in his own lifetime, he was exposed as a fraud.
Wrong. Take a drink, everybody. So myself, as well as many others, have looked for the alleged trial, and it wouldn't have been a criminal trial, it would have been an academic trial, of Haeckel at his university or any other. No one that I'm aware of has ever found it, whether creationist or not. So creationists, if you want to keep saying that Haeckel was quote-unquote convicted of fraud, produce the trial records or shut up, because I'm really tired of this lie. It's just a lie. As far as anyone can tell, it never happened. Now, he was called out in literature, which is not the same as having an actual investigation and a trial at the university. For $10, Vandelli in 1998 says, I know it's not as exciting as creationism is, but if anyone is interested in crabs, crabs are really exciting. What are you talking about? Crabs are awesome. In 90 minutes, Bree from Hive Science. Oh, hi, Bree. We'll be talking about carcinization for this week's podcast. Look, if there's one person I would say would be a good person to talk about carcinization to, who's on YouTube, I would say it's Bree from Hive Science. Or, yeah, no, it's Hive Science is the current one. Brainbug was the older channel name that she used. Hey, I still kind of think of her sometimes as Brainbug, because for so long, that's the name that she was using on YouTube. So, but yeah, no, actually, I've been on Hive Science's channel. We talked about the hypothetical classification of the various kaiju from both Toei and Toho. So,
Nice.
Yeah. I don't know if that video is still up, though. But if it's not, maybe she and I should do like a repeat of that, because we had fun with it. But yeah, since there's been some changes and some rebranding, I don't know if she's kept all the older videos. But yeah, that carcinization, in case anyone doesn't know, is the fact that numerous arthropod lineages just evolve into crab repeatedly. Like, it's happened dozens of times throughout the history of life, is various different kinds of crustaceans who are only somewhat related just become crab. Which means that, like, they take the abdomen and it's vastly reduced and it usually curls up under the body. They get big pinchers, and then they get like the sort of long and not very long side to side, but not very like long axially body, and then they're crab. They look like crab. In fact, some of the things that you might find at the supermarket listed as crabs aren't actually technically true crabs, like Alaskan king crabs. Not real crabs. Those are a different kind of crustacean that look like crabs, but they're not. So, also, if you've ever seen a Yeti crab, which is something that lives around like hydrothermal vents, not real crabs. But they do have big hairy arms, which is why they're called Yeti crabs. Which, it looks kind of ridiculous. It's pretty fun, actually.
In that he exaggerated the similarities between the human embryo and the other creatures.
That actually is hard to say, because Haeckel was right that at the time, given the optical equipment that he had, it would be hard to distinguish these things. However, he did draw some of his embryos without reference, and he also did draw some of them with perhaps more detail than his optical equipment could have produced. Now, his response to this was to say that that's basically what everyone's doing, this is just the common practice, and that given the equipment at the time, no one could tell the difference. And the thing is, even today, with just pictures from microscopes, it's still hard to tell the difference. So, should he have done that? I would say no. Are people still accepting Haeckel's recapitulation theory? No, recapitulation theory was defeated shortly after Haeckel proposed it. I mean, like, I believe it was within 20 years, but don't quote me on that because I don't actually remember for certain.
But that did not stop this from going into textbooks all over the world, where it still is. Next.
It's actually not that inaccurate. Now,
Literally, no.
yeah. Also, if it's in a modern textbook, I would object because we do have actual photographs, and those are better. We should be using actual photographs, not Haeckel's drawings.
Slide. Now, Father...
Cetaceans are a mammalian fish, says Skeletor over 9,000, and I actually am going to agree, but all mammals are mammalian fish. Because you should read Your Inner Fish by Neil Shubin, which I recommend, like, at least monthly. Go do it, guys. It's not an expensive book. It's really good. It's on my bookshelf for a reason. I love that book.
Father Zahm was a scientist and a priest at Notre Dame who wanted Notre Dame to be up there with Harvard, Princeton, and Yale. And he saw the way we're going to do this is we're going to embrace science.
I mean, that would be a good step.
We're going to show we're not...
Is he talking about Notre Dame the school or Notre Dame the cathedral?
I believe the school.
Those are not the same.
The school, right?
Okay, because the school is referred to as Notre Dame. It's not called Notre Dame.
Is it the one in the
Notre
US?
Dame is the cathedral.
But is he talking about the one in the US, though? Maybe there's another one. Because, like, that just means Our Lady in French. I could imagine a Notre Dame school in France that
I mean, if there's...
aware of.
But typically when people refer to a school that's spelled that way, they're talking about Notre Dame.
Notre Dame, yeah. Well, you know what? Really, let's just refer to it as Notre Dame, and then we can just avoid all of this because we're just using the actual French pronunciation, complete with the
Oh.
the uvular R.
Yeah.
It's I believe in the International Phonetic Alphabet, it's an upside down small capital R. So it doesn't go above the midpoint of the line, but it has the shape of the capital R, but like rotated 180 degrees. That's the symbol in the IPA.
Oh yeah, and I can... The NBD is asking who the fuck calls the school that. Literally anybody that cares about sports and people that attend that school calls it Notre Dame.
Yeah, see? The actual alumni and alumnae, which I can just say alumni because that's how Latin works. Although, I did have someone who went to school with me, and she continually referred to herself as an alumnus, and I'm like, that's not how Latin works.
You would be an alumni.
An alumna.
Alumnae.
Alumna is singular, yeah. Alumnae is the feminine plural.
Alumnae is the feminine plural.
Yeah.
Alumnus and then alumni. But yeah.
Normally, the masculine plural in English is just pronounced as alumni, which is
I
not.
know, I hate
it's alumni, but whatever.
I hate it. I know.
But yeah, she was
always be kicking Americans' asses on the regular.
And the weird thing to me was, like, she knew some Latin. Like, she wasn't completely ignorant of Latin. But yeah, she just continually referred to herself as an alumnus. I'm like, no, you're an alumna. It's like, you know what I mean? I'm like, I do, but like, you just graduated from this place that with a degree that would indicate you would know what you're talking about when you say these words. Anyway.
Stuck back in the Middle Ages. We're going to embrace science. And he, of course, embraced evolution. And Father Zahm wrote books in the early 20th century.
You know, I feel like there have been some even more prominent Catholics who have embraced evolution, like, I don't know, multiple popes in a row. Just saying.
Arguing that the human embryo recapitulates.
I mean, if he was doing that, and it's in, like, the 20th century, which I think it is, based on this picture looking like it's from the 20th century...
I was going to say that's Notre Dame.
That's Notre Dame.
But
that's super
Notre
dumb.
Dame.
By the 20th century, Haeckel's idea of recapitulation theory had been completely rejected. And instead, we had Ernst von Mayer's, who's another Ernst, granted, but, you know, different guy, Ernst von Mayer's laws of embryology, which were not recapitulation, which were much more nuanced, and to this day, still stand because they're true. And basically, to try and summarize, like, Ernst von Mayer's like model for embryology. So first, the more general characteristics of a group develop earlier in embryological development than the more specified ones. So, oh, excuse me, drank too much cider, I guess. Had a little burp there. So for instance, a notochord is very basic to chordates, right? It's one of the first things to develop in an embryo in a chordate. But fingers are pretty specific to tetrapods. So fingers develop later around the same time that rays develop in ray-finned fish, interestingly enough, because, hey, you know what? Those are homologous features. But
In
then,
the flat part of the C flap flap.
yes. But then even later, things like, let's say, like, it's a good example. You know the weird mammal nose with all the fleshy bits and the muscles? That develops really late in embryology in mammals. Or like, say, the tail absorption in humans. That happens really late in embryology because that's a very recent evolutionary development. And so that happens. And then also, he had another point where the more closely related two organisms are, then the later in embryological development, their embryological development will diverge from each other. So basically, if you have a human and a chimpanzee, you basically can't distinguish these until very late in embryological development, when they finally start to develop the subtle differences between a baby chimp and a baby human. If you've seen a baby chimp, it looks a lot more like a baby human than it does an adult human. Like, adult humans and adult chimps are way more different than baby chimps and baby humans. Baby chimps and humans, other than like hair cover and the fact that the chimp is a little bit more developed, virtually identical. Also, the nose is pretty different. But if you take, say, a chimpanzee and like a squirrel, now those are both actually fairly close related as all of mammals go. It takes less time to distinguish them, but still much more time than distinguishing between, say, a baby chimp and a baby horse. So again, it all fits in this Nestor hierarchy. And Ernst von Mayer's, is it Meyer? I think it's Mayer. Anyway, doesn't matter. Ernst von Mayer's ideas about embryology are still current. They're still taught. Now, it's not always taught under his name because this is just generally how embryology goes. And Vadim points out that, yes, Mendel was in fact a Catholic. He was a Catholic monk. And interestingly, originally his idea was to try breeding mice. But when he went to his bishop to ask if he could do mouse breeding experiments, his bishop thought that was a little bit too much sex for a monk to be involved with. So stick with plants. Which I think that's kind of amusing. It was like, I don't know, man, breeding mice, that's a little too sexy. Why don't you breed peas instead? So, oh well. I mean, he would have had essentially the same results with mice or peas, so whatever. Yeah. But yeah, his bishop was like, I don't know, man, you're a monk. That seems like a whole lot of sexy times. You know,
oh, it's too sexy.
Yeah,
sexy.
We don't want a monk being excited by mouse sex. That's inappropriate. Not that monks at the time weren't having a lot of sex anyway.
Yeah.
I mean,
requiring celibacy from humans is historically not really gone over too well, so
yeah.
It's almost like we have hormones and stuff, but, you know, hey, whatever.
Our evolutionary history, that this is evidence that evolution is true. Now, there is a direct line from the time...
Yes, Boneworm says, too spicy, Brother Greg. Too spicy.
Too spicy.
A Savage Cobra for $5 says, AIG is a vast volume of vulgar versions of virile vectors in a vivid vanilla valise. Wow. At some point,
according to my counting, we have now hit the $50 goal. So, theaters.
Same. At one of these points, we have to do like a challenge where the chat has to do AIG super chats, but all alliterated and all in alphabetical order, hitting every letter in the alphabet. Except for the ones that don't count anymore. Like, you don't have to do Thorn. Thorn can get a pass.
Okay, yeah.
But,
Thorn gets a pass.
Personally, I say we bring back Thorn. I really like Thorn.
I think it's very useful.
Yeah.
It would help us eliminate a lot of pronunciation errors, to be honest.
Also, and by recently I mean a few months ago, I found out that there are some English dialects that actually use the TH sound as a retroflex stop. They don't say th, they say t. And actually, a lot of Irish dialects do that. Which means that the speakers of these Irish dialects can differentiate between THIN and TIN, but most other speakers of English actually hear them pronouncing the same word because most speakers of English can't distinguish between the retroflex unvoiced stop and the actual alveolar unvoiced stop. But also, we have another membership gifted by Dr. Tapioca Weasel, which went to Mira DeFalco. Congratulations, and we will take a drink. All right, here we go.
When Father Zom persuaded Notre Dame that this is the way to go, and the day when Barack Obama walked on stage and received an honorary degree, while the real Catholics were being dragged off to the county jail.
What?
The real Catholics.
Who was being dragged
Like,
off to the county jail?
Remind me, was Obama ever identified as a Catholic? Did he ever claim to be a Catholic?
No, I believe that
That's what I thought.
he always self-identified with various Protestant groups, if I remember correctly, or at least a Protestant group. A Yellow Vermin for $4.99 says, just finish your Inner Fish on your recommendation. Excellent read. Also, AIG is a cask of pickled carrots. Thank you very much. We'll take a drink. And yeah, it really is really good.
Yeah, it's like, when were Catholics being carted off to jail? What the heck?
I mean, look, plenty of Catholics have gone to county jails, but I don't remember any of them ever being carted off for being Catholic. Now,
Like, in mass, yeah. Like,
now, I can imagine that, say, I don't know, if they were harassing people outside of a abortion clinic, that might have happened. Because Catholic or not, you're not allowed to just publicly harass people going into abortion clinics. So, but that's not because you're Catholic, it's because you were harassing people.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. You could say, oh, my faith requires me to harass people. Okay, then your faith is...
It sucks then.
Yeah, you're going to jail. And look, if your faith actually requires you to harass people, then you should be put in jail. Just like I'm sure if this Catholic man were to say, oh, your religion requires you to sacrifice babies to Baal, then we should put you in jail if you try. Yeah, we should. That's true. Fair enough. But if your faith requires you to harass people outside of an abortion clinic, then you should also go to jail. Works both ways, buddy. Although I will say that I think sacrificing babies to Baal is probably a little bit worse than harassing people outside of an abortion clinic. They're still both wrong, though.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it would be impossible for a Barack Obama to provide any kind of pseudoscientific justification for abortion if it weren't for the evolutionary pseudoscience that has been used for decades to justify the destruction of innocent human beings. Next.
Yep, we're going for abortion.
I know he's a Catholic, and he's going to be like, pro-life! Babies, no birth control! First of all, my religion requires abortion to be available. Second of all, even if it didn't, you don't get a say.
Mm-hmm. So, here's the thing. I've never encountered a pro-abortion argument that relied on recapitulation theory or anything about evolution in terms of how it relates to embryology.
Yeah, it's usually bodily autonomy and things like that.
Now, I've heard some arguments about, like, whether or not there's consciousness and suffering in embryos based on, like, level of development from people who are like, abortion should be available up to certain points in development. But again, those aren't dependent on the evolutionary implications of embryology. You can make the same arguments that are either pro or against abortion based on the facts of embryology, with or without accepting the evolutionary implications thereof. Because none of them actually have to do with the evolutionary implications. No one is saying that because the embryos of humans and the embryos of fish are more or less identical at certain points, that is the reason that it is okay to kill those embryos. No one that I can find. If you can find that, please send it to me, because I would be fascinated. Because as far as I can tell, this is just a pro-choice straw man, a pro-life straw man of the pro-choice side. I've never been able to find a pro-choice person making this argument. It would be very fascinating to see it, because one, I think it would be a bad argument. It would be actually kind of hilariously bad. But two, it would be nice to know that the creationists aren't just making this up. But yeah, I just do not know how we come to this conclusion.
Next slide. Now, Julian Huxley was probably the foremost...
Wait, are we just abandoning embryology at this point? It's like, it's an excuse for abortion, and now we're just going to go on? Okay.
Yeah, we're just going on.
Okay. I feel like there's some whiplash there, but okay.
Intellectual of his day. Not really, but in terms of popular perception.
Just a random dig at Julius Huxley without any particular backup. Just like, Julius Huxley was actually an idiot, really? Let's continue on. But actually, I think we're going to start wrapping it up, because I don't think we have time to get into an entire thing about Julius Huxley, because we're basically at the 2-hour mark. So, Vishanti, I believe I put some links for you in the description. So, yes, your channel is linked with the @ Vishanti, as well as your Amazon wish list is linked in the description.
Hey.
So if anyone is feeling particularly generous, they can get Vishanti like some boots or something. That's the only thing I remember there being on there.
Pretty far down on my list of priorities. It's mostly stuff like for the house. Like,
Okay.
I think an air fryer might be on there. If it's not, I'll add it. But, you know, little knickknacks here and there and a couple books.
Yeah, and boots. They're on there still.
True.
Oh, yeah.
I'll probably end up taking them off, though. 'cause
How
I'm
dare
eating
you.
right now. Yeah.
You know, keeping them on there is free.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't really need them right now. Like, I
Fair.
tend to put things on there that I either need, and then down at the bottom it's stuff that's just like for funsies.
Okay, so do you have anything else that you want to say beyond the fact you have a channel and a wish list linked in the description?
Stay hydrated.
Yes, I agree with this conclusion. Do stay hydrated. Okay, so on my end, I am having a stream tomorrow during the big game, which is not trademarked, which is why I'm saying the big game. I am calling tomorrow's stream the Superb Owl special. We're going to start with some owl facts, and then we are going to dive into an Answers in Genesis article that was released, I believe, yesterday or the day before, which is sort of a for layfolk update to the Gabriella Haynes paper that Vishanti and I went over on Saturdays. I think it took us... Did we do it over the course of 2 episodes, or did we do it all in one go? I think we did it all in one go.
I don't remember offhand.
I know we went extra long. I think we went like 3 hours that time.
Okay.
I think it was one episode, but it was like a long one. If you haven't seen that, you might want to watch that before you come into this one for some context. I don't have the guest list for that completely confirmed, but I believe Jackson Wheat is a definite yes, and there may be an additional guest on top of that. That will be happening at 4 p.m. Pacific, which is 7 p.m. Eastern, I believe. Yeah, 7 p.m. Eastern. Yes, that will be during the big game. I am counter-programming. I'm sure that I will get more viewers than the big game, obviously, because AIG getting birds wrong is much more interesting than a bunch of multimillionaires tossing around a ball that is shaped like a lemon.
Yeah.
Then on Tuesday, we will be doing Kent with Bent, I believe, number 104, and we should have a special guest for that. So there should be Kent, Bent, me, and another person. Then on the 16th, I'm going to double check what's going on, because I don't remember which video I am premiering. Because quite frankly, I have a whole bunch of videos in early access. Yes, we're going to be doing Reindeer Defy Evolution. So basically, this was a chat with ICR where they sat down 2 of their, like, I think they're on staff, but they're like associated quote-unquote PhDs. One of them has an honorary PhD, which means he didn't earn a PhD. The other one actually has a doctorate in dental science, which is, again, not a PhD.
Yeah, that's definitely the wrong field, though.
Mm-hmm. And they're going to tell us why various animals are, 1, cool, and 2, as a result of being cool, couldn't evolve. So we're going to use this as an excuse to, 1, talk about cool animal facts about cool animals, and 2, why no, that is not a problem for evolution. So that's going to be on Thursday. Then on Saturday, the 18th, we are going to be doing the Cambrian Bunny Awards. That is going to be at, I believe, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. And that will be myself, Jordan from Press X to Doubt, or Reasons to Doubt. Yeah, sorry, Reasons to Doubt. Press X to Doubt is his Twitter handle. As well as Dr. Dan Sturgeon Cardinal. We will be going over your choices for worst creationist argument, worst use of the English language by a creationist, worst behaved creationist, as well as best overall creationist. Now, if you want to vote in that, that is still open until basically just before we go live. So go to the nomination ceremony, and that is where you can find links on how to vote. Voting is done by likes. Whoever has the most likes wins in that category. And there are links to different videos. The videos are just 10-second black screen, no audio. They only exist to collect likes. And also to slightly generate ad revenue, because I did turn monetization on all of them. Because you know what? I'm going to have an award show. I'll make like $3 off of it, right? So, yeah, so that'll be the 18th. Then The 21st will hopefully be a Matt with Maddie, where we will continue looking at Matt McLean, the paleontologist, rather than Matt Powell or Raw Matt, because quite frankly, I hate them, and I needed a break from them. I needed to go a few months without ever having to think about them beyond just like, oh yeah, those guys exist. Gross. And then moving on with my day.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. So, anyway, I think that is it. Guys, thank you very much for coming. We have another Feeders episode coming up, apparently. Probably on the 25th. I'm not sure, though, because, 18th isn't going to be a Dapper Reacts. And I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your weekend, a safe time, and also, I guess, Valentine's Day is coming up, so enjoy using the execution of someone by the Roman state for being Christian as an excuse to celebrate romantic love here thousands of years later.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, because somehow that makes sense. I don't understand it.
All right, then.
But that's what people do. Anyway, goodbye, everybody.
Thanks for watching, but before you go, I just want to say a special thank you to my channel members and my patrons, especially those pledging $20 or above. Bob Knob, Work in Progress, Bent Hovend, Tapioca Weasel, Denny5252, Ian Chen, Landon Knoll, Mabbity Babbity, San, Sphincter of Doom, The Venerable Bede, Elleran Teller, Dr. Tapioca Weasel, and Pat L. Dennis. As you probably know, YouTube is a very volatile platform, and from month to month my income on the channel can swing wildly. But the people you see on screen are directly supporting so that I don't have to worry too much about that, and the channel can keep going as it is, and perhaps even improving. If you'd like to join this team, there are links below to join the channel or in the description to join the Patreon. The Patreon starts as low as $1 a month, and the channel memberships start as low as $1.99 a month. On Patreon, you can even get a discount for pledging annually. If you do decide to pledge, you'll get access to an exclusive Discord server just for channel supporters, as well as early access to all of my pre-recorded videos, often up to 2 months in advance. Higher tiers will unlock even better perks. Now, if an annual or monthly pledge isn't right for you, but you still want to support the channel, there is a merch store down in the description, as well as an Amazon wishlist, just for me. And if financial support isn't something you can or want to do, then if you still want to help out the channel, please just like and share these videos and make sure you comment on them. It really helps the channel out. Thanks again for watching.